All right. Okay, welcome back again. And where should we begin? There's so many different phases of this, much of the material that we've given you. I have another document to show you today. But one of the things I think that we got involved in last week, we should spend a few moments about this, because these are things that are scientific. There's nothing that we talk about here that has anything to do with religion. There's nothing that we talk about here that has anything to do with spirituality, because none of that stuff exists. It doesn't. You know, we sometimes wonder why we have such difficult times in our lives and with our families and our health and so forth and so on. And then look at the bizarre doctrines that we follow as being the foundation of our life. I mean, you know, I told this again last night, but I mean, if you've gone to church all of your life, you've lived and been raised with this scenario. There was two nudists in a garden talking to a snake. The snake told them where they could find some good fruit on a tree. And when they found it, there was an invisible man in the sky who got ticked off because these people were talking. So he got so ticked off for them talking to the snake that he killed his kid. Now his kid is coming back, and boy, is he mad. But before his kid gets back, the invisible man's going to start a nuclear war and wipe out 1/3 of the population of the earth. But don't worry about that, because everybody that believes in this kid is going to be launched off the earth up into the sky to meet his kid coming down. And you people call those other people cults. That's the funny part. And this is it. This is your holy doctrine. You've gone to church all of your life believing this. And then you wonder why everything is screwed up. And you know, and it really is. And it's been an extremely violent and difficult time. You're not living half the time you're supposed to live. And so many of us are filled with all kinds of diseases. And basically, the reason that we are is because you have, sitting on the top of your shoulders, between your shoulders, an instrument which is a computer called brain. And that computer operates exactly as any computer that you'd find in any business, but the problem is you haven't a clue how to use it. And if you don't know how to use it, you don't know how to program it. And if you don't know how to program it, what's coming out of there is a lot of trouble, because what's going in there is not what should be going in there. And that's all life is. There is no demons in you. There is no devils in you. These things don't exist. Inside of you is electricity. There are organs inside of your head that operate on electricity. In fact, if you've noticed, as I've told you, the word angel is actually the word angle, which means electromagnetic fields that come back and are reflected through space dust and impact the earth and impact on your brain. And when they impact on your brain, they cause an arc between receptors of your brain, which cause you to think differently. And that's the arc angle. But we, instead of understanding this from an electric and scientific standpoint, have put together a picture of some guy with wings on floating around with a white robe and going through clouds and even playing harps and all kinds of screwy things. And that's as far as we've gotten with it. That's what an arc, that's what an angle, that's what an angel is. Now, if you'll notice, all the angels or angles, names end in EL. Michael, Uriel, Gabriel, Raphael. Right? Well, there's another one. Electric, and that's how this whole thing operates. It's all run by electricity. And I'll tell you something else. Most of us are on overload and burnout because we have not understood how the resistance is necessary to hold the current down from the specific circuits of your brain. You don't know how to do it, and I'll tell you, if you get somebody that puts a computer or an appliance in your house and there's no resistors in there to take care of the current's going to burn it out. And we haven't a clue. We actually have people, there are people in churches all over the world today sitting and hearing bizarre stories about devils and demons and gods and all of these crazy things, and the whole thing is simply a myth talking about a computer that's fed by electricity and is waiting to program into you the actual essence of life if we'd only start to grow up and learn how to use it. Now, one of the things that, as we went and we talked about last week, which is interesting, is the fact that many years ago there was a group in Egypt called Coptics. These people were scientific people, and they said that you were not saved by grace or by faith. You were saved by knowledge, because they were into physics, okay? And they said that they encountered a person of Jesus. Now, just don't worry about all of this myth as to who this person was. That's irrelevant. But this person gave them three things that they should understand. One was a symbol. And he said this was a very important symbol. And this was the symbol. It's a cross with an X laid upon it and these 8 circles. It's in the books of IEOU that comes out of ancient Egypt. And you can actually find in most some ancient libraries. That's the symbol right there. And if you remember, when we started tracking the planets which have been discovered since October 1955, it was very interesting because the first discovery was at Pegasus, which fulfilled the sign in the book of Revelation. The second one was in Virgo, the Virgin. And they went all the way around to the 7th, which associated with the pineal gland of the brain, or the 7th chakra, which was Leo. And then the last one, the 8th one, fulfilled also the Bible, which says the last trump would sound, because the last planet was found in Cygnus, the swan, the trumpeter swan. So that was fulfilled. And then there was a just total cutoff of any further discoveries up until recently. Okay? The second thing that the Coptics said they were given was this word, A-Z-O, Z-E-O. When I first saw it, I said, God, this is what we need, another mantra to be, Azozio, and going on and on and on, and sitting with our legs crossed and, getting cramps and saying, this is a great time. But looking at this and breaking down the word became very interesting, because when you break down that word A-Z-O, it means light. A-Z-O means light. And the word Zeo is the root of the word zeolite, which means filtered by crystal. So it's light filtered by crystal. And electromagnetic fields, which come from space and are refracted off dust, are reflected by crystal, filtered by crystal, before they enter the Earth's atmosphere and impact in your brain. The third thing that, and the final part of the puzzle that was given to the Coptics, was the person Jesus told them, hold this in your hands, weigh this in your hands, and he gave them the number 4555. When I was looking through astronomy books and looking at galaxies and constellations and the like, one of the things that I found was curious to me was that I found a galaxy or constellation, galaxy 4565, and then I found one 4535 and 4525. So I asked Debbie to give a call over to the planetarium, and she called the planetarium at the college, and she said to the fellow over there, does the number 4555 mean anything to you? He said, yeah. She said, it does. Yeah, he says, it's a unnamed, very sharply defined galaxy with a very bright center. Wow, it's a galaxy. 4555 is a galaxy. And what then became interesting to us as we got a little further into it was the location. 4555 is a galaxy in the constellation Coma. Remember that galaxies are in constellations. Constellations are not in galaxies. It's a galaxy in the constellation Coma. And Coma is mother and child, therefore fulfilling the prophecy of Devaki and Krishna, Mary and Jesus, Isis and Horus, Buddha and Mom, and all of these kind of things. But then the second part of it is that it's in the zodiacal sign Virgo. Behold, the Lord shall give a sign, a virgin shall conceive. So we track a very, very interesting galaxy in this constellation Coma. And if not, to make the thing even more interesting, Joni Schultz downloaded this off the computer. We have a picture of it. Now, you can sit there and, we can say, well, God, could this be the location of the place from whence all of this intelligence is coming, from whence all of this instruction is coming, from whence those who are related to you live? I mean, could you be looking at a picture of this? I say, well, maybe it means something else. Well, maybe it does. But if it means 4555 is the galaxy and the location of the place that you call God, it is much, much too significant to turn your back on it and say, well, I'm not going to bother thinking about this. Because it's real. You see, I've noticed one of the things here, that in dealing with this type of material that we're teaching, some people can only stay so long, and some people won't come back. And the reason is this is real. There's no more room to talk about draw this or vibrate this. Forget about all of that stuff. The point now gets to this is reality. This is electromagnetism. This is the operation of the human brain. And I mean, in order to make this work, you have a responsibility. It's no longer, sitting around talking about things and so forth and so on. One of the important points also that were connected with this is that after you held this sign and you found this sign in your meditation, you said a Zozio and you held 45-55, is that you would meet somebody in your consciousness. And you would meet a person. And the person's name is Samael. Samael is the name of the person. Okay? Samael. Notice also that, if you will, the L on the end of this, part of the electric, part of the angel angle and all of that kind of business. So we look then to determine, well, the first thing that I do when I see words or names is look to try to break down the meaning of words. And if you look on the material of the stuff that you have, and those of you that are watching have a lot of this stuff too, and if you look on page 60, you'll see something interesting about Samael, all right? And if you look at S-A-M-A, and it's right there on page 60, just below the first paragraph, S-A-M-A from the ancient Sulu, which means current. Okay? Sama means current. Okay? And involved with current, of course, is resistance. This is electrical current that flows through the brain and opens up passages. Okay? Now, I showed you last week this ancient wheel with Samael, and Samael, now listen very carefully what I'm telling you. Samael equates with this lovely character that your religions have created to scare the hell out of you, called the devil or Satan. Okay. Samael, same thing. The opposer, all right? Now, let's think for a minute about the devil or Satan, okay? The devil or Satan in the context of reality cannot exist until something happens. If I decide I'm going to think about robbing a bank, and I think about robbing the bank, and I drive down and I look at the bank, there's no evil has occurred at all, has it? No money has gone out of the bank, nobody's robbed the bank, I just thought about it. If I rob the bank, the devil has occurred. Not if I thought about robbing the bank. If I rob the bank, the devil has occurred. Everybody has had thoughts. Each one of you, if you were to tell the person sitting next to you what thoughts you've had this week, everybody else would get up and run out of this room. Because that's the way it is. That's the normal way things are. And yet all of us smile. We have Bibles under our arms. We walk into church. How do you do? Praise the Lord, all that stuff. And yet during the week we've been in this bizarre escapade within our ears and in our heads. All of these wild things go. Well, so that's the way it is, because as long as you live with other people, your mind is going to be susceptible to all of the thoughts and all of the things that go on around you. So that's perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, well, I won't get into the things, but I mean, I don't have to get into the things, because you know yourself what goes on inside of your head. It's pretty wild, and don't tell anybody, unless you'd like. Just in other words, think, if we had this projector, and I could put on and project your thoughts, some of your real good ones you've had this week, and put it up on the wall. Would you hang around here? Absolutely not. I'm out of here, see. Okay. So thoughts then in and of themselves. Now that's the reason, while in the Adam and Eve story, the two nudists who are talking to the snake actually is a symbol of the spine. Eve is the mind, and Adam represents the physical part. And so what happens? When Eve eats the fruit, there's no problem, is there? No problem. Nothing wrong. Because it's just a thought. There's no devil. But when Adam eats it, all hell breaks loose. Right? Because now the deed has been acted out. What I'm trying to show you is that in essence what you have is a neutral energy inside of you called current. Current. Electrical current. And the current feeds the resistor, the current feeds the circuit, which is the brain. The problem with it is you've never been instructed to the fact that the circuits of your brain must have resistance. You never knew that. And so the current is flowing unchecked into your brain without resistance. And if you do that to any kind of the appliances in your house, they blow up and they explode and they burn out, and that's the end of them. And many of that happens to us too. People blow up, they explode, they burn out. Many times you're on overload, overheated, fired up. All of these things occur because you don't understand that your brain cannot operate with resistance. So it's not the current, Samael, that's the devil. It's what happens when the current is fed into the circuits of the brain unchecked. And what is resistance? Om. Om. And we never caught on. We continued to go to church and sing Amazing Grace, What a Wretch Am I, and all of this junk that they shoved down us, and never caught on to what life is about. Never understood it. Never for a minute understood it. And we have continued to brutalize the world. We've continued to drop bombs on people. We've continued to hurt people. We've continued to starve people. We've never, ever understood that that wasn't the way to live. And that life meant we had to get to understand ourselves and to understand how we operate. So this Samael then blocks your path. And 4555, as I told you, that galaxy, which it says in the Bible, the Lord shall give you a sign, a virgin shall conceive. Okay? All right. Now, here we are to the point where we've reached this separation inside of ourselves through meditation. Let me show you why, and you could sit here, and people who have been here the first time, people that don't understand, and people that say, oh, that's strange. They sit in a dark room, and they hear these sounds that come through the speakers, and they have meditation. And what's the sense of that? What's the purpose of that? You know, that sounds like a cult to me. Well, let me show you where our documentation, if you have one of these things, if you'll open it up to page 46, let me show you why we do this and why it's necessary to do this. Okay? We do it because, for instance, here on page 46 is a document that comes from the University of Massachusetts. The University of Massachusetts Medical Center, Dr. Ann Massion's Psychiatry Department, and she says that the reason that you should meditate is because meditation is a more effective method of melatonin production. You do not produce melatonin until you're in a pitch-black room, because the pineal gland doesn't open until it's in a pitch-black room. Melatonin production. And here's the University of Western Ontario finding increases in melatonin after a single meditation session. So what do you need melatonin for, you say? You know, what's the purpose of that? Well, if you turn over to page 47, you'll see, for instance, that the pineal gland regulates the circadian rhythm of your body, the time clock of your body. If you go to page 48, you'll find out a melatonin in cancer. Melatonin has been shown to inhibit the growth and metastasis of tumors in experimental animals. Patients who have breast cancer have lower levels of melatonin in their blood. It has a stimulatory effect on the immune system. Let me ask you a question. How many times have you ever tried to stimulate the activity of melatonin, the pineal gland of your brain? Probably you've never. Some of you have never, ever done it because you hadn't a clue, because you went to church. Look at page 48, the bottom. Stress. Environmental stresses affects pineal gland function, impacting body alertness. Page 49, multiple sclerosis. And where is this coming from? The Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Montefiore Medical Center, Bronx, New York. The last line, melatonin is cyclical. It is proposed that the pineal gland may be the prime mover underlying the spontaneous exacerbations and remissions in multiple sclerosis. See, you're just starting to find out how your body works. The aging, at the bottom, the very last line, pineal melatonin may be a natural anti-aging hormone. Page 50, the immune system, from the Department of Medical Biochemistry, University of Seville, Spain. It talks here about the protection of the immune system. There are interactions between the pineal gland and the immune system. The University of Thrace in Alexandropolis, Greece, there is a connection between healing of Parkinson's disease and melatonin. So you get sick, or people have been desperately sick. Would you ever think of, oh, well, I'm not going to tell them to meditate. Why? Because you don't understand the impact that melatonin in the pineal gland has on disease. Because nobody told you. Because you spent your life going to church. And you missed it. And so now we go through this point. We've reached all the way from the point of the temple. We reach up to the point of the crucifixion. We reach up to the point of the resurrection. And we reach to the point where here Jesus, at the point of the resurrection, says, wait for me in Galilee. And we look up the word Galilee, and we find in the stuff that we have here that the word Galilee means circuit. What's being said? That the energy that has resurrected within you as a result of your meditation is now moving through the circuit of your brain. When I said it last night, people looked at me and they said, they couldn't believe such a thing. But in order to prove it, I took it out of the Christian dictionary. So look at page 56 here in the material that I gave you. And on page 56 in the material that I gave you, what does it say? It says right about halfway down, before you go into Galilee, there shall you see him. Where shall you see him? You shall see him in Galilee. Right? Page 56. Look over to the right. The word Galilee, what does it mean? It means circuit. What is your brain? Your brain is a circuit. It's an electrical circuit. And that's where you'll see him. And so we wait in this place. We wait in this place to see. And then last week I told you of this very strange thing that occurred in the book of Daniel, in Daniel chapter 5, verse 5, which is on page 728. A hand came down without an arm attached to it. Remember? And the hand started writing. And the hand, according to the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 5, verse 5, wrote, by the candlestick at the plaster. And the candlestick is your spine. And remember we looked up the word plaster? And the word plaster is made up of lime. And remember in looking up and understanding the pineal gland of the brain is made of lime. And so we have here at the point of the spine, at the pineal gland, this hand wrote on the wall. And it wrote this word, mene. Mene. And I never saw that. I've read about it. But somebody here saw it, Rich. And he found it. And it's interesting because he finds things. He has an ability to find things, I was telling the people last night, I said, when you talk about the circuits of the brain and you talk about the brain as a computer, a computer is loaded with things called gates. And that's where they're logic circuits, and they're called gates. Your brain has 12 gates. Why does it have 12 gates? Because there's 12 signs of the zodiac. There's 12 constellations in the ecliptic. It's all set for you. There you have. It's just absolutely amazing to me that people have the most significant computer, the thing that can take them to the universe and beyond, and they never even tried to turn it on. Never even bothered with it. Because they've never paid attention to all of the instructions that come out. So we have gates. And so when you look at a computer, and you know about the gates in the computer, and then you say, who is the most powerful man in computers in the world? And what's his name? Gates. Then if I go to Atlantic City, all the gambling mecca of the East Coast, and who's the most powerful man? Trump. And I go to Las Vegas, the gambling mecca of the West, and who's the most powerful man? Steve Wynn. And so what have they said for thousands of years as the energy was going through the resistors of the spine up to the brain? The Buddhists would sit in the temples of Himalayas and all of these places for thousands of years, and as that energy would go through the resistors, they would chant, Om, Om, Om. And then come along this guy from Germany, and I forget what year it was, he turns around, he discovers the law of resistance, which is named after him, Charlie Ohm. His name wasn't Charlie, but his name was Ohm. But what would happen? What would have happened if his name was Schwartz? They would have been up in the Himalayas, and they would have been sitting there with their legs crossed, and they would be chanting, Schwartz. Come on up, Rich. Come on, you found this. But now this is what I wanted to tell you. You got Ohm, you've got Gates, you've got Trump, you've got Wynn. And now we got this guy who finds everything, and his name is Doppler. So tell us a little bit how you found it.
First of all, explain the word Doppler.
Well, the Doppler is an echo. What is it? An echo thing that locates things.
Radar.
Yeah, Doppler radar. You can.
Doppler effect.
Yeah. What is a Doppler?
You didn't tell me to get that.
Well, all right.
Well, you've seen it on TV, Doppler radar. In fact, when I was first in the Air Force, I went into a building one time that I worked special freight, and I walked in, and all the boxes, like 50 of them, big crates, said, "For Doppler only." So that was my first experience. It was Doppler radar for the aircraft.
You thought that was all.
But I said, geez, you've got them all marked with my name on it. But redshift in space also is based on a Doppler effect, to tell whether stars are moving towards or from or away from us.
Okay.
And can I say something?
Yeah.
In medicine,
Wait, we got. Hold on. Nobody can hear you.
in medicine, they use a Doppler. Like if you go to a doctor and you think you might have an obstruction in your carotid artery or in any artery, they take a Doppler and they put it over it to see if it's obstructed. So it reads that too for obstructions.
All right.
There's a lot of uses for it.
So then tell us about 45, 55.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. This is
Yeah.
work.
Okay. I like to use the board, right? It's easier.
Go ahead.
Okay. I found something else this week too, but I don't know if you. Basically, this is a Hebrew word, and gematria in Hebrew and Greek works both ways. The Hebrew and Greek both work out the same, but basically, M has a value of 40, E has a value of 5, and N has a value of 50. And it's 45, 55 if you just speak it, okay? The thing that, when I found it, I was just reading, and I thought it was unusual in the Bible where it actually told you in the verses afterwards what the words mean, and they were written down, and they weren't really translated. When they were translated, it wasn't written that way. It was kept in the original. The other thing that I found, and I don't know if you want me to go into this.
Go ahead.
All right. In geometry, you add these numbers together, okay? And when you do that, it equals 100, which equals 1, because you do away with the zeros. You can add or subtract zeros to numbers very frequently. Bill has often drawn. Can I erase some of this for a second?
Absolutely. The heck?
We've seen this symbol a lot with the dot in it, okay? And that equals 1 on the cubit measurement for the royal cubits. There's 28 divisions in the Egyptian cubit. The very first measurement is 1, and the symbol that's given to that is this. So it does equal 1. The other thing I found after that was the original symbol for theta that we see like this in Greek. This is the original symbol for theta, okay? And it evolved over the years into this theta. Then Bill said, well, what, Tuesday night, he said, well, what relation does that have to the brain? Anything? And I said, nah, I don't think so. So then Wednesday night I went home, and what I discovered was Pythagoras, when he used this symbol for geometry, if he gave the circumference a measurement of 1,000, doesn't matter if it's 1,000 apples, 1,000 oranges, 1,000 inches, the diameter comes up to 318. Okay? Now in Greek, the word theta is spelled theta, H-T-A. That's how you spell theta. When you give the values again from gematria, 9, 8, 300, and 1 is 318, which is the diameter of a circle. There's an old saying in Hermetic saying, God is a sphere. God is a sphere whose whole circumference is nowhere, but whose center is everywhere. Kind of ties into quantum a little bit if you ever get into that. The other thing is, this was related to the sun. This is a symbol of Ra, the sun god. And the Greek word for sun is helios, which in Greek is written H, lambda, I, O, sigma. And the values are 8, 30, 10, 70, 200 equals 318. Okay? Now, then I said 318, 318, 318. I waited another day, and I said, all right, keep going?
Yeah,
all right. And I said, well, what does 318 have to do with anything other than Helios, theta? And I said, theta, theta, theta. So if you look on your stuff on page 32, with all the brain waves, yeah, all your stuff, Bill's stuff on page 32.
Okay.
Now, you might consider this a stretch. I didn't, because this came to me, and I felt pretty good about it. The 318. Now, again, staying within, you can add numbers, you can add zeros, but you got to stay with these numbers. And when I looked at theta, the theta rhythm of the theta wave, it's the 8th letter, blah, 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 and I was looking at the cycles per second. And if you look up there, it's 4, which is 3 and 1, 4 to 8 hertz. Beta waves are 13, 1, 3 to 30 cycles, 3, 0. And alpha rhythms are 8 to 13, reverse it. And I just thought that kind of tied in for me. Something that I was looking for as brain waves. All these things kind of culminate. I didn't share that with you yet, but I just found it the other night.
Very good.
And then delta waves, anything under 6, and that's kind of easy to do.
Very good. Thank you very
That's
much.
pretty much it.
And keep looking. Keep looking. You tell me this stuff. Very good. Thank you, Rich. Yeah, it's very meaningful to me to see, as people start to work at this and start to find these things and look at them, and it really becomes, it just becomes very, very meaningful that you've taken this so seriously. Okay, so let's go on. When we're talking about, incidentally, when we talk about numerology, what does numerology mean to you as a person here, 1997, today? And that's why I would invite you to come out on the 24th, May 24th, Saturday evening. And Mike Fierro, who's in the second row, is an expert on this. And Mike is going to be sharing with us and talking to you, and I'm sure talking to you personally about some of your things. So it'd be a very interesting evening. Don't look at numerology as some kind of a whacked out thing. It's certainly not, because it was the essence of the work of Pythagoras, who said all things are numbers. So please kind of set aside Saturday evening, May 24th, at 7:30 p.m. and be here with us, and we'll share together. But in a few minutes that we're going to remain here, let's go back and talk for a minute about Sama. Okay, Sama, which means current. Now, and this is the person. The reason this is so interesting is when we talk about 45-55, and we talked about this hand. Now, this hand that came down and wrote on the board in Daniel chapter 5, verse 5. Remember, it never happened. Remember, a hand never came down and wrote on any board. Remember, this is mythology. And this is being given to you. And that's what makes it so significant that 45-55 is there. There was an intent here, okay? But this Sama, which equates by the ancient people to the devil, which means current, or to Satan, which means current, okay? And if you look on page 60, which I'd like you to do for just a moment, of the material, or the stuff that you got on page 60, and you look at that word current, okay? And then look at impedance, right under current. It says impedance, electricity, the measure of the degree to which an electric circuit resists electric current flow, expressed in ohms. This is basically the answer to so much of our search. Because what we're talking about here is, how does your brain work? What is required of it? What is required of the circuit, which is the brain? So in essence, we're being instructed how to resist the surging current. How to resist the surging current. The circuit resists the current, and the current is expressed in ohm. The circuit resists the current, and it's expressed in ohm. And this is everything that is involved in every bit of religious experience you've ever had. There has nothing happened in your life that has not happened as the result of electricity causing current to flow through the circuits of your brain. The devil or Satan is simply a form of electric current which must be resisted by the circuit of your brain. Because when the current is not resisted, you have an overload. You have a burnout. And the burnout that you recognize is stress, breakdowns, strokes, disease. All of these types of things happen because there is no resistance to the current that is flowing into the circuits of the brain. Why? Because we never paid any attention to this. We were taken away from understanding ourselves the way God tried to instruct us and put into these churches, and we study bizarre things about devils and demons and all this stuff and gods and things, and taken completely away from the reality of the fact that within us is a circuit. The circuit is run by a current. The current must be resisted. It's not that there's anything wrong with the current. The current is an absolute necessity. That's why God creates the devil as well as the good thing. The current is absolutely necessary. But you can't allow it to go in unchecked, or it's going to cause you problems. And you wonder, why do I feel the way I do? Why did this happen? And my husband is this, or my wife is this. But you remember, your husband or your wife also does not know about the resistance necessary to be in operation in the realm of the current that flows into the brain. So they've been on overload all of their lives. Most of us are 30 years old, 40 years old, 60, 20 years old, whatever it is, and all of our lives, our brains, our computers have been on overload. They're not functioning properly. So then you'll start saying, why do I think these things? Because your brain isn't functioning properly. And the reason it's not functioning properly is because you have not been putting the resistors where they should be so that the brain can have just enough current so that it can work right. If you look on page 56, please, and if you look on page 56 of the material that you were given, you'll see something that's, and remember, everything that you're looking at is documented scientifically. All of this is scientific documentation. Okay, but if you look on page 56, you see, that should be, is Orgate on page 56? Yes. Halfway down it says, Matthew 28:2, there was a stone, the electromagnetic field rolls the stone away from the fornix. The angle causes the arc in the brain receptors. In Egypt, the pyramid was open to an angle of Orion, the gate of God. The OR gate, which is a computer logic circuit. And then it defines a logic circuit, a computer switching circuit that performs problem-solving functions. What problem do you have? You say, well, geez, where do I start? I get all kinds of problems. And you find, why can't I solve these problems? Because the switch isn't opening. The switch isn't functioning. Wonder if you have in the circuit of it, say you've got this big family problem. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with the kid? What am I going to do with my husband? What am I going to do with my wife? And here's the switch. Now, in order for you, here's the understanding. This will bail you out of the problem. This will bring the money that you need. But there's a switch that's closed, okay? And that in order for you to understand, the switch has got to be open. But there's no current to open the switch. The right amount of current is not coming into the brain to open the switch. And so you're never going to be able to figure this out. And the reason is there's no resistance. And so this circuit is operating on overload. It's not working properly. If you go into a computer, I go into a computer and I put all of this stuff in the computer and I put print and the computer says, bah, 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 nah, not enough memory, not enough memory. I don't get anything. And I get frustrated. And I'm frustrated and the computer's frustrated because what the heck? I spent all of this money and you can't do this. Why didn't this stupid fool that sold me this thing tell me it doesn't have enough in here so that it knows to do this? But it didn't. Why? In other words, the IBM guy that sold me this said, it's up to you to put the amount of RAM into that so that you have to increase the RAM. And you know what happened when you were born? God said, it's up to you to pay attention to this thing and put the RAM and put the resistance in there that's required. Not me. I'm not going to do it for you. You do it. And what did you do? Do you know, do you have any idea that in the middle of a computer, in the point of memory, is a thing called RAM? Yep. Do you know that? When you look at page 16, Will you look at page 16? On page 16b, in the middle of your brain is a thing called Amon's horn. Amon's horn. And if you look at page 16b, Amon's horn, and Amon's horn is the name of an Egyptian deity whose symbol is the ram. In the middle of your brain, you have a structure called RAM. In the middle of a computer is a structure called RAM. And they are both in the part of the brain responsible for memory. And so what do? Are you working on it? No, you go to church. And then you wonder. Do you have a car? Do you have a car? You have a car? You have a car? Do you know how to drive it? Wouldn't it be great if you had a car and say, well, my car's out in the parking lot. Well, would you drive me over? I don't know how to. Well, why don't you learn? I don't know. My church told me not to touch that. I can't get involved with that. My church says I'm not allowed to touch the car. So your car sits there. Yeah. Here's your television. That's a beautiful television. Oh, that's a good television. That's RCA TV. Look at that. 36 inches. Turn it on. I don't touch it. What do you mean you don't touch it? My church said, pastor said, never touch that. Devils will come out. we go in there and we kneel down with it. We kneel. We go like this in places where these fools go up there saying, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. You'll go blind. You know what they say? Same thing. Same thing. And so all I'm asking you to do is say, do you care about your health? Do you care about your body? Do you care about your mind? Start treating your mind and your brain as an adult. And start considering the fact that as an adult, you have a responsibility to learn how to operate the computer that you have between your ears. You have missed 90% of life because you've only used 10% of your brain. And you're being instructed how to use this, you see? And so we found here that the gate which is closed, that gate is in the circuit of the brain, and Jesus says that at the part of the resurrection that he's going into Galilee, which means circuit. And look how important this is. How important is that word circuit? Look on page 57, and look how important this is. We're just about out of here, so just bear a couple more minutes and you're gone. But if you look at the important derivatives of the word circuit, EI on page 57, you go down through January, Janus, from archway, Ionis, the god of doors. Look at that, Rich. You see that? The god of doors. And then you get to Hinayana and Mahayana, which is the Sanskrit. In Buddhism, the mode, the knowledge, the way. And Jesus said, the way is narrow, and few there be who find it. The way is narrow, and few there be who find it. Because I'll tell you something. You know, when you think about the survival, you know what happened yesterday in Iran? They had an earthquake. Almost 3,000 people that were alive the day before yesterday are dead now. And so what am I saying? That if they had meditated, this whole world is subject to what's coming out of your head. And that's what Buddha said thousands of years ago. He said the reason that you have this total upheaval in the atmosphere and in the environment is because of all the negative vibrations coming out of the brains of billions and billions of people all over the place, causing all of the stuff. It's the same thing that when you go into your house sometimes you get bad vibes. Where are they coming from? Sometimes you brought them with you. Sometimes that house was beautiful. Everybody was singing. Everything was going. And you were in a mood. I have had that happen to me. Once in a while, I get in a mood. And as soon as you open the door, you come into the house, I'm in a mood. How are you, dear? How'd it go? I don't want to talk to you. In a rotten mood. And so what do? You retreat to your room, close the door. I'll fix everything. I will stay here in my room until somebody begs me to come out. That's the way I'll fix. And so you cause all of this stuff. Or else you go into the house and you're feeling great. How are you today? And you can feel the vibes all over the place. So you create these vibes. Now, if you can create bad vibes in your house, and you can, What do you think happens when we got billions of people on the planet Earth, which is nothing more than a pimple on the rear end of the Milky Way? Billions of people having bad vibes. What's happened? The Earth is puking. What is this? Everybody's freaking out. Why? Because everybody's brain is on overload. Nobody knows. No, it's not what, nobody's got a reason. God's saying up there, there's nobody down here with a resistor. The whole thing is burnout. They're all nuts. And they said to Jesus, go back, the second coming. He said, you're crazy. I'm not going down there. I'm going down there. Last time was nails. Now they have missiles. I'm not going down there. So this is the point. This is the point. The current must be. Give me 10 more minutes. We out here at 12:30? That'd be happy with you? Okay. All right. The current must be resisted. If the current is resisted, then the proper amount of current will go in here and it will operate properly, and brain cells at the right hemisphere will start operating that hitherto have not operated. Resistance is the key here. Okay? And here is now why. Let's look one more time so we understand it. Can you feel on top of your shoulders? Is there a round thing up on top of here? Okay, that's a head. Inside of the head is a brain. That brain is a computer. Okay, as you've seen here, that brain is electrical circuitry. Okay, if your brain is electrical circuitry, if that circuitry is operated by current, then it must have resistance. It's the same as any other computer, and so you have to treat it exactly the same. You have to understand the circuits, you have to understand the current, and you have to understand the resistance. It is no different than that, okay? Now, if you look, please, on page 57, which you've had open, I've got a quote from the encyclopedia right in the middle there. And it says, the brain works somewhat like both a computer and a chemical factory. Brain cells produce electrical signals and send them from cell to cell along pathways called circuits. All right? Along pathways called circuits. So then Samael is the current that must be resisted by the circuit. And what does it say in James chapter 4 and verse 7? Look on page 989 of your Bible. And it says on James chapter 4 verse 7. And it sums up what you've got to do. All right? It says, resist the devil and he'll flee. See? So what do we do? What do you do? What do they do in church? You know what they say in church? Devil, I rebuke you. All right, this is what I want you to do. Sit in front of your computer, or let's go sit in front of this electric light. I rebuke you. And the light's going to say, I rebuke you too. And if it's time to burn out, it burns out. And when it burns out, you stand here, I lay hands on this thing in the name of Jesus. So what? It's not going to go on anyhow until you put a bulb into it. You got to screw it in. No matter what you do, you got to screw the bulb. So the point being, you cannot treat your brain any differently than you treat an electrical appliance. It has to have proper current, proper voltage, proper resistance. The circuits have to operate properly. And if you're going to neglect it, and I would ask you before you come into this room, how many of you ever even knew that you had a circuit in your brain? How many knew you had any current in your brain? How many knew that you needed resistance? How many even paid attention? And how long have you been working on overload? And then you wonder, Jesus, why am I screwed up? Well, it's the same reason, because you haven't been taking care of yourself. You take care of your foot if it hurts. You take care of your stomach. You take care of your teeth. But the most critical thing that you have, the brain, you haven't a clue. And the reason that you haven't a clue is because you've been submitting yourself to all of these crazy people in robes with stained glass on the wall saying, stay with us, stay with us, stay with us, pass the basket, give us your money, listen, let us read the Bible together, and then you'll get a rich reward after you're dead. Sounds good to me. And you know, the point is, we keep coming back. Tell me more. Because you know what? Everybody knows one thing. Everybody dies. But have you ever seen one person in 3,000 years come back after they've died and said, this really works? Nobody. Not one person has showed up and said, you know, I'm glad I gave that money because I got a place. I got a mansion on a hill in heaven. I got nothing. What? I'm dead. All right. So why is this necessary? We're done, okay? In something such as a computer, you can only have so much current going in, or you're going to burn it out. If you have too much, you burn the circuit. You've heard of people burning out too much. Then you read about resistance. So how do you do this? And this is where we'll end. How specifically do you do this? Let me put a word on the board. That's the instructions. That's the instructions. Okay? Look at page 60, the material that I just gave you, or we got last week, or whenever you got it. Look at page 60. And on page 60, look at the word yoga. You see it in the middle of the page? Yoga. See what the word means? What's it mean? Yoke, doesn't it? All right? Now open the Bible to page 787. Page 787. Okay? Matthew chapter 11, verse 29. And what does Jesus say? Take my yoke, take my yoga upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest under your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. My yoga, take my yoga. How do I take your yoga? Practice the single eye. Take no thought. Seek within yourself for the kingdom. Take my yoga upon you, and you shall find rest for your soul. Something that most people have never found the whole time they've been alive. You'll find rest for your soul. See? It's meditation. It fixes the mind on the object of knowledge. See right below there? Profound contemplation. And what is profound contemplation? Who is the one that you must resist? Samael. And he is the one that will resist you. And so then what is profound contemplation? What is profound meditation? Samadhi. See? Do you see it? See? The perfect absorption of thought in the object, its union and identification. So it is samadhi which overcomes Samael. It is the key. It is the symbol of 8. It is the zogio. It is 4555. But we, as it says, let's just finish these two paragraphs and then that's it. Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky put it this way. Fantasy. And you know what each one of us has taken instead of understanding this? We've taken fantasy. We've lived a fantasy. When you go to church, it's like going to Disneyland. There's somebody playing an organ. And there are people get up with robes on. And they have lights and they have candles and all of these things. And it's nice. And there's not, you know, it's really pretty, especially on Christmas Eve, you know. And all of these things are nice. But they don't change the circuitry of your brain. They don't change the current of your brain. They don't apply the resistance to the current, which is burning you up. They don't do this. And so Blavatsky put it this way, fantasy is an impediment, you can read it here, to our intellectual conceptions. And when we are agitated by the inspiring influences of divinity, if the fantasy intervenes, the enthusiastic energy ceases. For enthusiasm and fantasy are contrary to each other. And if you look up the fantasism, it's something seen but no physical reality. It's religion. It's emotionalism. It's feeling. It's the things that so many people seek for. Yet it's the very thing that will oppose our union with God. And the very last thing, fantasy, the very last bottom of the page, the creative, unrestrained fancy. Something that's such an invention that it is a creation of fantasy. Fiction characterized by a highly fanciful or supernatural element. Fiction. And our whole life has been consumed in the fiction of religion. And because of the fiction of religion, we have missed the reality that we are real entities with a real functioning computer that we have totally neglected because we have plugged ourselves in to this circus that they call religion and traditional concepts. And we pay for it big time. And the reason that so many people are in hospitals now is because they've neglected themselves and they've neglected the mind. Thank you very much.